But mindfulness is a state and a skill.
Right.
That's where it gets kind of cool.
Yeah.
So the state of mindfulness is the full awareness, right? You and I are probably mindful right now, okay? And then there's also a skill that you can train, which is deep focus or observation.
Right.
Rich observation, something like that. Okay. So he'd say, there's a graduate way of doing it as well. Like just, how about living mindfully? Well, to do that, you've got to train the skill.
I'm Andy Petronic, the co-founder of the Whole Life Challenge, the inspirational game that helps thousands of people around the globe take action each day to improve their health, fitness, and well-being. Join me each week on the Andy Petronic podcast for interviews with guests that will help give you ideas, get inspired, and take action toward being the best and healthiest version of yourself you can be. Boom, boom, boom. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, everyone, it's Andy, and here we go. Episode number 139 of the Andy Petronic podcast. Yes, it used to be called the Whole Life Podcast, which is why you heard me pause. This is my show. And, boy, I've been on such a really fun roll with guests. 3 people in the last 3 weeks that have really, so enjoyed the conversation. Sam Morris a couple weeks ago, Zen Warrior, and Krista McDermott last week, who's a family therapist and super duper expert in resilience. And this week I've got Dr. Michael Gervais on the show, and holy Toledo, guys. This guy is a who's who of sports psychologist who works with high performers. He's got his roster includes an MVP from every major sport, internationally acclaimed artists and musicians, and Fortune 100 CEOs. His partner in business is Pete Carroll, who you might have heard of before. He's been a speaker and recognized expert on CNN, the Wall Street Journal, ESPN, NBC, and the NFL Network, Red Bull TV, Extra, the Huffington Post. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him in a second, but I want to get to something else first. What occurred to me this morning? I've got this water filter system, that's reverse osmosis water filter system that sits about 10 feet away from my kitchen sink. And the reason it sits so far away from the sink is it's kind of big and doesn't really fit very well on the counter space next to the sink. It would take up way too much space and look kind of ugly. So it's across the kitchen, but it only holds about 2.5 liters of water, which means that 2.5 liters I go through easily in a day because I make my coffee out of it. I drink my regular water out of it. My son drinks all of his water out of it. My wife drinks all her water out of it. We cook out of it. We're probably using 3 full refills of that tank every day, I would imagine. Like 1.5 gallons, maybe a little bit more. And I'm always having to refill that thing. I'm like, we actually have some glass pitchers that we fill up with that filtered water in it so that we have more than just the 2 or so liters. Actually, did I say 2.5 liters? I think it's a little less than 2 liters. So we've got those on the counter, but God, it seems like I'm always having to refill them. And it just reminds me of the chop wood, carry water maxim it's a Zen saying. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. And it reminds me of the mundaneness of life, of the fact that life and growth and mastery is not sexy. The result of leading a life of mastery can be sexy. Like you look at a guy like Alex Honnold, who we talked quite a lot about in this podcast, or Felix Baumgartner, or some of the extreme athletes you watch on TV. I mean, incredibly sexy, incredibly cool. But the process of getting there is slow, steady, painstaking, mundane, a little like tending a garden. It's slow and steady progress. You got to nurture those little seedlings into plants and chop wood, carry water. Chop wood, carry water. And really, it's the foundation of the Whole Life Challenge. We are in the 5th week of the challenge right now, and I'm in that place of, this is boring. I want to be done. And that's when I got to lean in. That's when it's very, very beneficial to exercise that muscle, the lean in muscle, the show up muscle. And so I encourage you guys to consider that. Consider that in your life. Where does it show up for you in your life? Where do you have to chop wood, carry water? And look at that. I mean, perhaps a way to look at it is to look at it as a gift. I get to chop wood and carry water. I get to fill that water filter and move it across the kitchen. Some people couldn't do that. It's not I have to, but I get to. That little change in perspective can very often help you. So, Michael Gervais is about to join us. Like I said, he's worked with some of the most extreme athletes in the world. And one of the coolest parts of the podcast is where he introduces a concept to me called the default mode network. It is the default operating system of your brain when you're not really doing anything else. Like if your brain is turned off, your default mode, which is the default mode, is the network of the elements of your brain that are turned on. And they have you focusing on me. They're very internal looking, and they don't stop. I think of that as kind of that voice that I always hear judging myself, critiquing myself, giving me advice, good advice, bad advice, like the little angel and the little devil sitting on my shoulder, coming from the default mode network. And one of the things that high performers that are on the razor's edge have in common is they have found a way to turn that default mode network off and to get in a flow state and to allow them. They couldn't do what they do in their life and they do in their sport without doing that. There'd be too much distraction, and we can all learn from that. That's what one of the things Michael talks about is the purpose of meditation and mindfulness training, to teach yourself how to quiet the mind and turn that down. And I never really related it that way before. It makes me feel like meditation is almost training to be on the razor's edge, and it actually is. So look for that in the podcast. We talk about so many more things. He's got some fascinating stories. I took more notes. There are more show notes on the wholelifechallenge.com/podcast page than I've ever taken before. And super stuff you don't want to forget, stuff you want to dive more into, or at least I do. So check it out and enjoy. Michael Gervais, everyone. So, Michael Gervais, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's thank you for inviting me down here. Like I feel like I'm on vacation. I'm looking out at the Hermosa Pier, and this is a spectacular office. I'd love to come to work here.
It's a great place to think. It really is. Yeah, thank you.
When we were out at Outside Magazine and Chris Keys mentioned, introducing me to you, I was like, that would be a home run, partly just because of who you are and what you do, but also because of my old connection to Red Bull. And, not that the only people you work with are Red Bull athletes, but it's very interesting to me to, back in the day I was doing it, that wasn't available. I needed it. I needed you.
Me too. Yeah, me too. Desperately. Yeah, it's a small world, and it's fun to have. I'm looking forward to this conversation because there's going to be lots of fun overlaps. And I think we've been trending in similar circles, but haven't met yet. So this seems I was excited when knowing that you're coming down.
Cool. I wanted to start with, you like your list of clients is like a who's who of people and of all sorts, but I'm sure you didn't start there unless you were incredibly lucky and you just jumped in and said, hey,
yeah, no,
I'm the guy to go to.
I didn't, nor was that ever an interest.
Right.
And I get calls often or emails and, requests like, hey, I want to be in your field of sport and performance psychology and whatever. I want to work with elite athletes. And those ones in particular, I like to respond to say, that's the wrong focus. I think that's the wrong focus.
Right.
I never had an interest to work with tip of the arrow. I had a deep interest to work with people who are committed to change, right? To be better. And you grew up in the action sport world. And, there's something natural about that industry, folks in that industry, where progression is at the center of, I think, most people's DNA. Just getting better. How do I get better? And It's like an internal thing. I just want to get better a little bit more better to next day. And so I just want to work with those folks. And they tend to be some of the best in the world across domains.
Right.
Like that's a golden thread that I've noticed throughout most tip of the arrow performers.
So when you were just getting started, how did you establish yourself? How did you establish this business, and how did you start working with people and finding your clients? And
yeah, that's a good question. I don't think it ever did. I don't think it ever worked that way.
Huh.
So the journey was that I've got actually a good story for one of my first entry points into pro sports, in sports period. So I grew up in action sports as well. I wasn't a fan of stick and ball sports. Like I didn't fit in them. And that's a longer story that I'm happy to get into. But so I went through my training, undergrad psych, master's degree in kinesiology, which is more how the body works, back to PhD in psychology, licensed as a psychologist, specialty in sport and performance. And then after probably 15 years in the field, if there were such a thing as a subspecialty of like dangerous environments, that's where I spend most of my time. So early in that path, after my training, I met a GM. I met the medical director of a pro team, so the MD, and it was hockey. And he introduced me to the GM and the strength coach. And the three of them were like, oh yeah, this will be great. This will be awesome. And think about how green I was telling this story. I didn't even meet the head coach. and we signed a contract.
Really?
Oh, come on. What was I thinking?
Wait, so what school were you at? Where was this?
So the long journey was, do you want the long journey or kind of crib notes?
Well, I don't know. Crib notes is fine.
Loyola Marymount, Long Beach, and San Diego.
Okay.
And there's a couple schools in between. That's why there's a longer story there. But
let's get a little fun.
Yeah,
what's the fun?
Yeah, okay.
I'm very intrigued by fun. You dangle a carrot, and I'm going to follow it. I'm my attention span. Much to my employees' chagrin, is boom.
Well, your fun and most people's fun is a little bit different. So
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
All right. Right out of high school, I had no clue what was up. And it was my senior year in high school. My mom pulled me aside, and we're in my kitchen, their kitchen. And she said, hey, listen, we tried. No one went to school in my family. And they're more the hard school, hard knocks, I should say.
This is where? This
is in Redondo Beach.
Oh, wow. Local. Okay.
Local, yeah. And so I didn't get an SAT. I didn't go to my SAT or PSAT, the entrance exams to college, because I was surfing. And so I blew those off, and I had no interest. I didn't even really know what university or college life was about. Mm-hmm. So I was just putting my head down, trying to get better at surfing, loving that lifestyle. I had a totally different vision of what my future would be, which was to travel the world and surf all the world-class, surf breaks.
Had you thought through the money part, or that?
Yeah,
wasn't...
I did. And the money part was, I don't need much.
Okay.
So it's pretty Spartan,
you're a homeless guy basically running through somehow, finding your way around the world.
It was me and a group of like 3 or 4 guys, which when I look back and I look at where they are now and where we were together then, it's remarkable how powerful my girlfriend at the time, now wife, how pivotal that relationship was, because she said one thing to me early that changed everything. And so our pack, my guy friends back then, was we were going to surf the world. We were going to check things out from an organic standpoint. We didn't need much, and we're going to live wherever we could on the kitchen tables. The vision was milk crates with plywood and plastic sheet over top of it, and that was going to be our kitchen table across the world. Right? We could find milk crates everywhere.
Right.
We could find plywood anywhere.
Right.
And we could get a paper cloth or whatever kind of cloth, and that was what we'd eat. That's what we'd eat. So we didn't need much. All we needed was money for travel.
I got this picture in my mind of like Stand By Me, like the little kids, the 6-year-olds.
Yes. Oh, I never had that image. Yes. Oh my God. Oh,
you're an older version of Stand By Me.
Yeah, that's awful. Yeah. And so, like, part of me misses that because I think that would have been a phenomenal adventure. Now, like like the mature adult part, I've been able to travel the world, right?
Right.
And I haven't had to live in those squander type of environments, which has been fun. So I still I love the adventure part. I love the exploratory part. But back to the story is, I guess I should finish with my wife, like a girlfriend at the time.
The question.
Yeah. She says, no, it's a statement. She's like, she goes, that's fine. Which really means it's not.
Exactly. I've been married long enough to know that.
Right. And she's like, there's just so much more in you. And my antenna kind of tweaked a little bit, like, well, that's a cool thought. What does that mean? And her answer was, I don't know, but there's just more than that. And so that one of my antenna kind of lost true north to what, the guy friends were thinking about, I mean, you can paint the picture: Nicaragua, avocados, totally sunburnt, looking for water, looking for some sort of food at night, but having the best waves in the world. Like you can,
absolutely, yeah, totally.
You've lived it too.
Yep. I haven't lived that, but yeah, I've lived that picture in my mind. Yeah, there's versions of skiing and snowboarding and surfing, and they're all very similar.
Yeah. So I had part of that early mission or vision was to chase winter, chase summer. Yep. And to do that. And I haven't put together 6 months of winter, 6 months of summer without work. I haven't done that yet. I will at some point. Like I will want to do that. But anyway, so back to the story. So one of my antenna kind of twisted, like, what is that other thing that she's seeing that I didn't see? Mm-hmm. Now couple that with my mom in the kitchen, and it was like, I can still see and feel the sun coming in Southern California. It's not too hot. But that moment where she said, we tried, and you've got two options now. And I'm 17. And so I was a year early in school. And she said, you've either got to get a job and get out or go to community college. I said, community college? That's for losers. I had a 0 on my SAT. I never carried a book in high school. Like school was not, but I had the
But that's for losers.
Please. Oh my God. What was I thinking? And so what I did, so I was like, I'm not ready to get a job and get out. Like I'm 17 years old. That's not.
Did she spring that on you or?
Kinda to me, but if they were here, they'd be like, no, we were working that message for a long time.
Was Dad around also?
Yeah. Dad traveled a lot.
Okay.
So he was in the corporate world at that point. Uh-huh. And so he wasn't in that conversation. And so my dad and I had like there was a tenuous, tough relationship where he taught me a lot about being a man and a lot about, working hard for the family. But there was a tough, so I'm trying to become a young man and he's the man. So there's that toughness that was always part of it. And there's tenderness too. But I'm painting maybe too aggressive a picture. But so that conversation's taking place and I go, oh, wait a minute, in the back of my mind, I know I can surf and go to school. So let me just choose school. I'll get another 2 years out of surfing, and then home will be a home base, and then I can start this travel vision. So that's where it started. And then what happened is I went to school, but I didn't go to community college. They saved some money, and I went to a private junior college.
Okay,
up in Palos Verdes, Marymount College, and it's right over top of a couple. Nice surf breaks. Yeah, really nice surf breaks. Right?
I've surfed. I did a bunch of outrigger paddling with Lana Keela out of.
Oh, you did out of Redondo.
Yeah. Okay. And so we used to paddle over to the cove, and I've done some one man paddling into some of the waves in the cove. And
yeah, it's good.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's good. And then as you go further south, there's even better waves.
Right.
Around some of those nooks that people don't like to talk about.
Yeah. Well, it's a little rough crowd down there too. Yeah. If you're not a local, you're not invited.
Yeah,
I don't know how it is now, but that's how it was.
Same.
Yeah.
You know, those. You know, it's funny. Cultures don't change very easily, and now I just kind of put my business hat on, if you will. But that's a cool thought that you just helped me with, because I didn't have that thought before. Which is, so the surf culture at particular surf breaks. Mm-hmm. They don't really change, and neither do cultures in business or family cultures, unless there's great leverage, great intention, great when I say great, like very purposeful, focused attention on changing ideas and changing thoughts, and so changing thoughts and changing behaviors. So, and that takes a lot of work to do, a lot. It's not easy. It might sound, but it's, as you know, changing habits is that's intense work.
Well, it's a rabbit hole that I don't want to lose. I'd like to go down, but I also want to hear the story. Like I want to, my immediate question was, what are your thoughts on action versus thoughts? Which one comes first and which one works better? And
I've got
I'm
real
sure you've
thoughts
got
there.
a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
So you think we can remember between the two of us to come back to that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I like that.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. Stories are overrated anyway.
No, they're not.
No, they're not. Why do we love stories? Campfires for
I've
years.
been listening to Jordan Peterson quite a lot. I'm like 10 lectures in. They're 2.5 hour lectures.
Wildly fantastic and deep and rich. He comes from the right place.
It's incredible. And the stories and the stories we've all been living in without even knowing we're living in the same stories that have been going on for millennia. Mm-hmm. You know, it really kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, it's for sure. So, okay, go back to this story in particular. But I think this is really important, not because it's my story, but because I think a lot of people wrestle and struggle with. I know that people wrestle and struggle with, what is my purpose?
Yes.
Okay. And we look at the most successful people and they say, well, they're living their purpose. They must know. Yeah, maybe.
Right.
Maybe. So there are a couple ideas here that I would like to unpack, which is, just because you're extraordinarily physically talented and at something, eye-hand coordination, and you've found your way into archery, it doesn't mean that that's your purpose.
Right.
Right. And they know that. It might be for some, but so I've spent a time in a lot of different environments, world-class environments in the sport world, as well as business and arts. The performance is important, but I want to make a big number, like 99%. I don't have any real research data here, but a big number that it's not enough.
Right.
Yeah. It doesn't fill the human.
And that's a universal, and maybe it's not 100%, but it's a pretty big percentage.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. So this idea about, like, what is my purpose? Where am I going in my life? What am I doing? Those hard questions are really important to wrestle with and grok with. Those are really important. The difficult questions in life, if you pull out of this thought for a minute, Harvard did a 75-year study on fulfillment. Mm-hmm. That's a long time to do a research study. And they had lots of people in it. And what they found, there's two pillars that were very important. One was those that had fulfillment, happiness, joy in life. They wrestled with the hard problems. That was one of the pillars. They asked the hard question, what am I doing with my life?
Right.
I don't know where I'm from. I don't know where you're from. I don't know where we're from. And I'm going to go back to that place at some point, because we're only here for a little bit of time, right? Like how many years? 80, 90? I don't know. Right. You know, and if you're living to 110, the last 10 years is probably pretty freaking hard.
Right. You're not leaving your front porch.
No. So, like, if we're only here for a little bit of time and there's no guarantee when that time ends, let's crack it. Let's go as intense and wonderful and peaceful and contentment and have a fire in our belly as often as we possibly can. Now, to do that, I've spent my whole life trying to figure out how to help myself first, my loved ones second, and then the people that I'm fortunate enough to love, you know, in other ways, in business ways as well. So how do we do that? Well, I didn't know my purpose. I didn't really have a big vision. And I changed the vision as soon as somebody dropped a new thought into me, like, hey, there's more in you. So I'm up at school trying to go surf. I tested into remedial math and remedial English. Okay. It's not that I didn't understand those two worlds, math and English, but I didn't know how to study. Mm-hmm. I floated through high school. It was awful. Like it was not good. So I'm sharing all this because, like, there's hope for people. If I could do it, you could do it.
Right.
There's hope. And then the second part is our relationships are more powerful than we think.
Yeah.
So my relationship with my girlfriend at the time makes that thought. My mom makes that thought. And then these 3 professors who were best friends, a theologian, a psychologist, and a philosopher.
Sounds like the start of a joke.
It's usually bad when it starts this way. And then we walked into a bar.
Right.
And, and literally Dr. Zenka, Perkins, and Kuzio, I love saying their name because those 3 dudes saw this young kid who was full of anxiety, full of piss and vinegar, trying to get like I was trying to get my way, but I was really an anxious person. Mm-hmm. And they saw this proclivity to want to get better at anything.
Right.
So I said, I'm going to try to do the school thing a little bit. And man, they brought me in, they wrapped their arms around me like, hey, listen, kid, let me show you about the invisible. And that's where it started. No one really from like the next semester on, no one had to ask me to read another book about the mind.
Wow.
I mean, it was like, I saved my high school report card. I got an F in psychology.
Wow.
Now I'm a psychologist.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
You should frame that on the wall.
No, I put it in. So there's this diagnostical and statistical manual, and it's a book of all the disorders of the mind. And I purposely keep an F, my report card, in that book to remind me that I don't understand the disordered human. I studied it. I went so that interesting story. So I went from junior college, like falling in love with learning, to Loyola Marymount, loved it, didn't know exactly what to do. So I followed the trajectory, if you will, of psychology. And so I went to a master's degree program in psychology at Pepperdine. Mm-hmm. And second semester, I was like, this is the study of the disordered human, the clinical, schizophrenic, bipolar, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you have that or your family members have, I just didn't want to spend my life efforts trying to understand it.
Right.
I wanted to understand what I needed, which is, okay, I'm relatively healthy, a little bit of garden variety anxiety stuff, like relatively healthy. I want to have an amazing life, but there's no roadmap on how I can be better from the inside out. Mm-hmm. There's a kind of a clear roadmap how to get better on the outside in, right? Like you training, physical training, right. Technical training, totally. Kind of, and
yep.
Go, if you want to be a lawyer, do this. If you want
how to do it surfing.
Yeah,
and
right.
You did it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Without even knowing it.
Yeah. So then, how does the mind work? And I wanted to understand it because I intuitively I knew it was important, and I didn't have anyone teach me about it.
Right.
And so I'd love to ask you, like, have you formally trained your mind?
What does that mean?
It's a cool thought, isn't it? Have you formally trained your body?
Yeah, of course.
Right. And you've formally trained a craft. You've had coaches of running or kayaking or whatever.
Everything. Right. Yeah.
So there's only 3 things.
That's really weird.
Isn't that crazy?
That's really interesting question.
Yeah. So there's only 3 things we can
train. I don't even know how to answer that question.
Right.
I feel stupid.
No.
Now, I mean, not really. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not like judging myself because I don't, but maybe I have, but I don't know that I have.
Right. Okay. So there's only 3 things we can train as humans: our body, our craft, and our mind.
Right.
Okay. There's an asterisk next to spirit. It's an early conversation about can you train your spirit, because as a scientist, as an appreciator of science, that I'm really wanting to know more about that, the spiritual world. Mm-hmm. And is that a story or is it a real thing? I was spoon-fed Catholic. I think the Trinity is beautiful. I've left the church. I've come back to the church. I've left the church. So spirit and religion are very different. Mm-hmm. And like, can you train your spiritual capacity? Or is it really about training your mind to be more present, to feel more deeply, to be more connected to the true nature? Maybe it's the same thing.
Right.
So I'm just going to lump the 3, right? Body, craft, and mind together, or separate them so that we can lump them together. Okay. So separate them first. And formal training of the mind would have required you going to see a psychologist. They are the quote unquote experts of the mind.
Right.
But their expertise, for the majority of psychologists, are how the disordered mind works.
Right.
Because that was born out of the medical model of like, hey, if you've got a broken knee, let's fix it. Mm-hmm. If you've got a broken elbow, let's pull it apart and hammer it and screw it and stitch it. And okay, good. Broken heart, we'll get the valve right together. And modern medicine is very different than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, certainly 150 years ago. And the same thing is happening with the mind. is that it was born out of studying the disorder because that was the easiest thing to spot.
Right.
By the way, when you're observing other people and observing oneself, it is far easier to find what is broken, what is not good.
That comes up all the time in my relationship with my wife. Come on. That's
right.
That's easy pickings.
And she loves you for it.
And she with me. I mean, come on. That's easy.
But that's how science starts too, right? We investigate the things that are obvious. And isn't that interesting that the obvious is the things that aren't working well? And the world of the best of the best of the best, it flips. At some point it flips where they focus on what's good, how to amplify that, how to triple down on it, how to position ourselves so we can do the amazing more eloquently, better.
Does it flip because it's harder to see what's not working? Because it's so many things are working well?
No, I think because at some point we have to let go of focusing on all the broken because what we experience is a rumination of the broken, and then how do we ever get out of that? So I'd like to get nerdy for a minute. There's this thing called the default mode network in our brain. I don't know. Are you familiar with that thought?
No.
Okay. Do we save this for later? Because that default mode, let's do it now. The default mode network is the idle part of our brain.
Okay.
And there's two particular parts of this, the brain, and I'll oversimplify it. There's part in the front, the midline, and then the PPC, another part of the brain. So these two parts of the brain are active in a defaulted state. And what happens with those two is they start to ruminate about me, my life, my condition, me. And so it's a introceptive observation of self that is the default mode. And what we, the scientists in the field of mindfulness and meditation and research of neuroscience have found is that when you focus your mind on one thing, and that deep, intense focus on the one thing, it could be putting your fingers into a hold in El Capitan, Alex and Old, right? 2,000 feet up, deep focus to be able to scale that without rope, without, clips.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So that's a deep focus. Or it could be focusing all of your attention on your exhale in the same type of way, that deep committed focus, call that mindfulness, call that, free climbing. What happens is that default mode goes away. It never really fully goes away, but we drive our resources attention to the thing that matters most, and we lose the introspective, like, hey, how am I doing? How am I doing? How am I doing? Because we're fully committed to the other. This is why deep listening, right? So if a depressed person comes in and we say, hey, are you taking care of other people? What do you mean? Oh, you're just focused on yourself so much, huh? Well, kind of, but I feel really badly. No, go volunteer.
Right.
Go help.
Right.
So why is that an actual studied practice to volunteer for other people, to do service to other people? It makes a dramatic impact for people that have moderate depression and mild depression because we focus our attention outwardly.
Right.
So this is one of the reasons mindfulness training, many reasons why mindfulness training is on a deep rise right now as a practice.
But the interesting thing for me, because I've done a lot of work in the mindfulness area, I've studied Zen. Anyway, a lot of stuff. We don't have to get into that. But
yeah, we do.
But
I think it's really important. I do too. Yeah, that's why I studied it.
But there's an you can easily slip into the notion that mindfulness seems like it would activate that same part because you're by yourself, you're sitting in front of a wall, looking. What else do you think about? What else do you do? You of course you're thinking about me. Like I'm not saying that you do that, but I'm just saying that could be a thought that it's certainly a thought I've had. It's certainly a thought that I'm sure other people have.
Yeah, it's a early knock, an easy knock from one religion, pick the religion, on Buddhism for sure.
Right.
Which is, it's a navel staring, self-focused, right? So like you, I was exposed to meditation mindfulness probably, I don't know when you were, but for me it was 20 years ago when I was just kind of getting going in some training. And my teacher says to me, no. You focus as if the inhale depended on a loved one getting it right. And then you focus on your exhale as if a loved one's life depended on you getting it right. That's a really cool thought because one, that's an incredibly deep focus. There's no space literally for, am I doing it right?
Right.
And then as soon as you say, am I doing it right? You go, oh wait, that's not focusing on the breath. Right. And that moment of distraction, the moment that you're aware of the distraction, you know, the storyline around mindfulness is that I can't quiet my mind. No kidding. Neither can I. It's hard. But the moment that we have awareness of the distraction, that's the celebration. Right. It's like, I'm doing awareness training right now. Okay, what do I drive my attention to? Well, I could focus on my back. I could, how it hurts right now because I've been sitting for 12 minutes, or I could focus on the thing I set out to focus on. Maybe it's loving kindness. Maybe it's a breath. Maybe it's an inhale or an exhale.
But when you're conscious of the fact that you're doing it, you're not doing it.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a celebration in the fact that you are doing it. And then, okay, Lionel, let's get back to business. And
that's exactly it.
Right.
Yeah, so the moment of distraction, awareness of the distraction, there's two pillars of mindfulness, awareness, and then wisdom, right? So awareness and or / insight wisdom. And so the awareness training, become aware of four things: deeper awareness of our thoughts, our emotions, our body sensations, and the environment around us. That is the awareness training. And as soon as you're aware that your mind is away from whichever the center of the attention, you know, the focus is, then you just bring it back. It's so simple that it's hard to put words to.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to judge yourself for not like you said, not doing it right. Like what is right? I had I interviewed Lauren Roach, who's written lots of books. He's a PhD meditation teacher. He's been doing it for like 50 years. He is actually a surfer, grew up in Southern California. And I
did not know that.
He's got a beautiful way of putting it. He's like, look, meditation doesn't need to take the form that you think it might need to. You don't have to go to a monastery and be a monk. You don't have to sit in Indian style or in lotus. You can do it sitting in your couch, just like we're sitting right here, you know, like laid back lounging. It's what you would experience in the most comfortable chair you can possibly sit in, the most comfortable way you can think of relaxing, and just giving yourself a love and a hug and just being with yourself. Yeah, it's like making love to yourself. You know,
it's funny because my first teacher, I was, how old was I? 20 some years ago. So I was 20 something. And he says, Mike, I was the kind of, for a young person, very cantankerous. Is that the right word?
Cantankerous. It's
an old word for old people.
My grandfather used to say that.
Yeah. Right. So, but like I was just ornery, you know, like more of a skeptic, which I'm not now. I'm much more open. And so come on, you want me to what?
That's right.
Right? Like, come on. Please. And so he said, Mike, trust me, you need it. Like, you're so busy trying to shred. You're so busy trying to, you know, kill the wave or whatever. Like, yes, you need this for more rhythm. You know, yes.
Yep.
All right. And so, and because he had such a soul about him, I was attracted to the way he was living.
Yeah.
And so early on, I come back to him. I was like, it's not working. Just like, you know, this is stupid. And he says, Mike, when you get this right, now mind you, I'm a 20-some-year-old. When you get this right, this is like a full body orgasm.
That's enough to keep a 27-year-old keep his attention.
What's that? What do you mean?
Right.
What is that? Okay, I'll try it one more time.
Right.
Yeah. So
I need a lot of practice.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, anyways, there's so.
What's the advantage of shutting that part off? That's thinking about you, me. Like, why is that?
Well, that's related to really deep suffering.
That part.
Yeah. Like the self rumination.
Right.
Because that quickly goes to like worry, depression, anxiousness. Like it really does. It's linked to suffering. Sorry.
So people that aren't suffering and have never done any mindfulness training, do they just not have an active part of of their brain there? How have they? How do you explain people that have never had therapy? They're living great lives, and they don't. Do they not have that part? Is that part of their brain lopped off, or is it just not?
You know, it's a really cool thought. That's a very cool thought, and. No, I don't think so. Of
course I would. Yeah, of course they don't. Of course it's there.
Yeah, but so genetics are part of it, but you know, the thought that people aren't suffering, my antenna come up for that, And there's degrees to it for sure.
Right.
I don't really, this is going to sound like I've got this morbid kind of view of the world, and that's not it. Everybody I know, every person I know, me included, like there's a loneliness inside. There's a questioning inside. There's am I good? Do I have it? Like, what is my purpose? Like, I don't mean that that's like this incredible suffering, but when you really spend time to be present, you'll feel some stuff.
Well, isn't it interesting that I asked the question? The fact that I think that there are people out there that are not experiencing life the way I am. Those people out there, all those people that are fine.
Yeah.
That are, and maybe everybody else has that same thought. Mm-hmm. Everybody else is thinking that same thing. And there's nobody actually out there.
That's right. Yep. We do this.
That was a really cool... that was a really cool experience. Just having that.
That is cool, isn't it? We do something similar, like in a corporate environment. We'll ask how many people here, so just like, don't raise your hand, but just write a yes or a no. So it's a survey. How many people in the room think that other people, for the most part, have their life pretty well figured out? Yes. Right? Yeah, other people, yes. And then how many, do you think that you have your life sorted out? No.
It's like 90%, 10%.
Yeah, right. Same thing that you just experienced.
Exactly, right.
So we do have that bias, right? That is other referenced, that they must be better than me, or they could be better than me. And, and look at social media has taken off, right? It's not a bad thing, but it's a other referenced experience. So look how great my life, my highlight reel is. Mm-hmm. And it's perpetuated that little thing, like, well, see, everyone's life is better.
Right.
But that's been there for us for a long time. That's not new. It's just that technology has found a way, to amplify it.
Right.
Yeah, it's good. We need it. We need that pendulum to swing in that direction, so it can swing in the other direction again and maybe come back to normal.
But it amplifies it in a global sense. So now the people that I'm comparing myself to are not just the 150 people in my local community who, some are high skilled in one or two things. Now I'm comparing myself to the massive high achievers in every aspect of life all over the world.
So for some, that's going to be a big problem.
Right.
But for others, that's going to be a radical accelerant for human performance.
It's inspiring for some.
Oh yeah. Look what happened to the 4-minute mile. We know that story.
Right.
With Bannister.
Right.
He cracked it, and then
boom,
bang, 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 bang.
Yep.
Right. Okay. And that was before the days of video. So we had a little bit of a lag time.
Right.
So now we don't have lag time. Remember when you were growing up? So for me, for surfing, we had to wait for VHS to come out.
Yeah, right.
And they come out, every 3 months? Because you had to film it, cut it.
We used to go to the community center to watch Warren Miller. I mean, Warren Miller, he was the god in those movies were like just godlike.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get him on VHS.
That's right.
I don't think you could get him on VHS. So you had to go to a group,
a back scratcher. Like, whoa, look at that back scratch. And
right. Glenn Plake was like one of my heroes.
That's right, for a lot of people. And so then we had to wait another 3 months to see what the people that were living the mountain life were figuring out, and we had to wait. Okay. Now that's not the case.
Right.
GoPro changed that. Social media platforms changed that. And so we're seeing it bang, 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 bang right away. So the iteration process and the progression process, it's really exciting.
Right.
Now, if you get caught up in a self-ruminating, am I okay because I'm not able to do the thing that they're doing, then that becomes part of an accelerant
the
of suffering
judgment,
as well.
the self-judgment.
Yeah, so that's why mindfulness is another reason why mindfulness is really important, is because that default mode network that we're just talking about is self-critique, is self-referenced, is judging of self.
Right.
And so that's where the suffering comes from. So mindfulness, a definition, John Kabat-Zinn's definition of mindfulness, is a particular way of being in the present moment, focusing in the present moment without judgment. Mm-hmm. And so it's that judgment that becomes challenging and problematic to anything we want to do in life, whether it's business or art or sport or relationships or figure it out. That judgment, that self-critique at some point becomes a worn tread.
Yeah, overwhelming, and it can take over.
Yeah. It can get you good now.
I want to ask you a question. Back to your story of the 3 professors that helped you turn the light bulb on. What was the moment? Was there a moment that the light bulb turned on? Like, how was it gradual? Did it just take place over the course of the first semester there?
Yeah, maybe first 2 semesters. It was gradual. There's a couple kind of watershed things that took place, but it wasn't like bang, one. it was a way that they were with me. It was a way that they were with people, and I was observing, and they wouldn't know at the time the impact they were having on me.
Right.
It wasn't like I was on bended knee saying, "Oh my gosh,
give me
please
more,
take
give me more."
in."
Right.
It was just like this thing. It's like it was a cultural experience that I was open to participating in. And then there was a moment when I asked one of the professors, I said, "Hey, listen, I'm waking up in the morning and I'm brushing my teeth. I'm overwhelmed at that point about how much I want to do and need to do and have to do in life. And my hands are shaking and I'm anxious, and I'm 19 years old, 18, 19 years old. And I know there's got to be a better way. I'm just overwhelmed with life." So that's anxiety. Looking back, I didn't know it at the time. That's anxiety. And he stopped me in the middle of me explaining my ill condition. And he said, "Hey, when someone knocks on your door, do you have to answer it?" And he walked away. And I thought, let me set the story up. So hey doc, can I talk to you for a minute? He goes, "Sure, Mike, come on, let's walk to class." We're walking across the open area, the green area of the campus. And we're walking, and I'm telling the story. "Hey, I'm really having a hard time. I'm struggling, filling the story." And he stopped the story. He interrupted the story and said, "When someone knocks on the door, do you have to answer it?" And they walked off. And I thought, man, psychologists are weird. What the hell was that?
It's a koan.
Yeah,
it was your first koan.
Yeah. So what the hell?
Right.
And so...
what's the sound of one hand clapping?
That again. How about the old, mystic tradition of trying to figure out when you wake up, if it's an inhale or exhale?
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Isn't that cool?
Oh God, that's going to drive me nuts.
So sorry. No.
Wow.
Just without going too deep, what do you think yours is?
Inhale.
Yeah. Wonder why.
I have no idea why. Why?
That's good.
But I got a 50-50 shot.
So,
red or black,
But so, do you have, as a rhetorical kind of question, do you have that level of awareness at the beginning of your day? No, we don't, because our mind kicks on right away. Oh, I gotta. How about just be right here, right now, in your bed, fully awake? So back to Jon Kabat-Zinn, and if you're not familiar with Jon Kabat-Zinn work, game changer. He's a beautiful man. He's been, it's me with my professors as well. I've said to him though, you had a great influence on my life. Thank you. And he gives me this warm hugs. And
Jon Kabat-Zinn.
Yeah.
He was one of your professors, or he?
No, he's someone I met later in life. He was the reason. So he is Harvard, MIT trained PhD. And so he goes to the East, studies mindfulness, and goes, whoa. He was the first, I think, he is often credited as the first that came back, him and a handful of people around the same time. But he came back with a medical model and said, I'm going to study this thing. Wow. And so he brought the science of mindfulness to us. And he's far more than a scientist, though.
Right.
He's an enlightened, wise man.
Yeah.
And so anyways, and he would say that, back to your point about, sitting lotus style, he'd say, yeah, that's good. That's good training. But there's so many other ways.
Right.
And then he says, by the way, this is not him, this is many people. By the way, there's a graduate level course too of mindfulness. It's being mindful in eating. It's being mindful in everything it's being mindful as a way of living. There's still training. So this is the interesting part of mindfulness. I'm not sure why we're here so deeply. I think we both appreciate it.
Yeah.
But mindfulness is a state and a skill.
Right.
That's where it gets kind of cool.
Yeah.
So the state of mindfulness is the full awareness, right? You and I are probably mindful right now, okay? And then there's also a skill that you can train, which is deep focus or observation.
Right.
Rich observation, something like that. Okay. So he'd say, there's a graduate way of doing it as well. How about living mindfully? Well, to do that, you've got to train the skill.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's cool. And then where I was going is waking up. Well, I've lost my train of thought. I was waking up, being aware right when you wake. Oh, so what he says, thank you, Mike. he says, when you wake up your body, finish the job. Wake up your mind.
Right.
Get it right.
Finish the job.
Get your, right? Isn't that a cool thought? Finish it. So anyways,
let's take a quick break and then we'll be right back. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Getting my meals delivered to my house for my lunches has been a life-changing experience for me. They sit in my refrigerator. They come from the Good Kitchen. They sit in my refrigerator for 2 weeks. They stay good. They're vacuum sealed. They store very, very tightly so they don't take up a lot of footprint in my fridge. And they're delicious. I don't have to think about where my lunch is coming from. I get 5 per week. So if I have a business lunch or something else, I have meals on the weekend, or I can eat one for breakfast, or I can eat one for dinner. And they're compliant with the Whole Life Challenge. You can get vegetarian versions or paleo versions or ketogenic versions. Do yourself a favor and give them a try. You get 15% off your first order by using the link thegoodkitchen.com/WLC. Let's get back to the show.
So I'm standing in the area at the college going, professors or psychologists are weird. But what he was trying to induce, if you will, is an interruption in the story that I've been telling myself a lot, that I'm a mess.
Yeah.
And so that fundamental interruption is a gift. So where many psychologists and friends get things wrong is they help people tell the story, which deepens and greases the groove.
Right.
So we do need to understand stuff.
Right.
Okay, as friends, as whatever, as, people in deep relate, we need to understand. But then we also need to fundamentally alter that relationship or that storyline. So he did that.
Yep.
That was what he was doing. But it was just odd.
It's like a pattern interrupt.
It was great. Yeah. And then, but the way he interrupted, do you have to answer the door when someone knocks? No. But every time the disturbing knock that
you do answer the door,
and it's me entertaining thoughts.
Yeah.
So the knock is a thought, right?
Yeah,
I don't have to entertain that thought of, man, there's so much, oh my God, I don't know. Am I going to get this done? There's so much I got to do. And if it doesn't work out, I don't have to entertain any of that. I can just go back and brush my teeth. Mm-hmm. I can actually choose to focus on something else, which is man, I got a lot going on. I can't wait to see how I do. I'm going to try to get out of the house in a meaningful time. I could have any thought. And so anyways, that was a very disruptive experience for me early on. And it set me down even further, what is going on in my freaking head?
Did you continue surfing? Were you as excited about surfing as you had been? Yeah,
I don't surf as much as I'd like to now, but I think about it as much as I did then, which is awful, So I think for me, surfing is a place I work it out. It's people think the ocean, that's people's altar. I don't know. It can be, but it's a place to work out competitiveness. It's to work out kind of how mind, body, environment work together.
But is it the ocean or is it the act of surfing for you?
For me, I think it's my placeholder, if you will, for figuring the internal out. Surfing is great. It could be basketball for people.
Right.
So
it's the act of doing, not just we have a beautiful view of the ocean. That's not it for you.
Yeah.
That's nice, but that's not
part of it. Yeah. It's part of it.
Okay.
The view is part, but the being in it is I think more important for me.
Yeah.
So I'm business partners with Coach Carroll. And so just the way I talked about, Coach Carroll's the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. Sorry.
Right.
The way that I just talked about surfing, he talks about it with basketball.
Oh, cool.
So one of our early conversations as we were just getting to know each other up at Seattle, he goes, hey, let's go shoot some hoops. So he's dribbling the ball and we're walking out to the court and he says, this is where I work it all out. It was cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, same
that's
thing.
Cool.
Yeah. And I hope everyone has that kind of thing.
Right.
Where do you work it out?
That's a good question. It's a good question. I mean, I think for me, I always said that I glommed onto adventure racing because I had kind of ADD and I could do a lot of stuff. So I think for me, it's more the physical act of doing something where I have to be focused. So, I've recently taken up unicycling. I taught myself to unicycle in the last 3 months and somehow I can do it. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done and most frustrating.
Really?
And, but now I'm able to, The other day I made it around my block twice. I came down off the unicycle probably 5 or 6 times, but it's incredibly hard. And that's after like a lot of falling, hours going by where spend not even a half second up without holding onto a, fence post.
Because I imagine you've got good balance.
Yeah, but not for unicycling.
No, yeah. What about slacklining?
Yeah, I've done that too. I didn't. Is
that hard for you?
It's hard. Mm-hmm. It's hard. Like there's a wobble factor.
That's why I was wondering if there's something similar between those two.
Well, no, for me, no. Mm-hmm. I mean, you would think that I'd be maybe a little bit better at picking up unicycling, and maybe I am a little bit better at picking up unicycling than the average person because of all the variety of stuff that I've done in my life. But it certainly didn't seem that way in the first month I was doing it. Like, I mean, it, over and over of failure. In fact, I started to try to pick up the skill kind of on a whim. I saw a buddy of mine, Ronnie Teasdale, who was unicycling all over the place, and I sent him a quick Instagram. I'm like, dude, if you wanted to do this, how would you do it? I wasn't really even thinking like I wanted to do this. And he sent me a reply. He goes, I got a unicycle hanging up in my office. You want to come grab it? I'm like, shit, he just called me out. I'm like, okay.
Love that. Yeah.
And that was about a year and a half ago. I started doing it. I practiced every day for probably 3 weeks, and I only got a little bit better. And
what did you realize about like your thinking when you first started? If you go back to the first time you're getting on it, mm-hmm. what were your thought patterns?
Well, before I ever got on one, I thought there's so many people I know that can do this. How hard could this really be? Like I remember very viscerally having that thought. In fact, I've never put a helmet on unicycling, which is bizarre to a lot of people, but as you become better at unicycling, you realize, not better, if you spend 10 minutes on a unicycle, as long as you have something to grab onto, when you fall on a unicycle, the bike moves. You don't fall down. And so I've never, maybe 3 or 4 times not landed on my feet. And but my initial thought was this couldn't be that hard. And then the first time I got on it, I was like, my world I'm in a completely different universe.
Okay. So this is a really cool part of, I think a part of the inner experience. I start optimistic. Some people start pessimistic and they never really get past it.
Right.
Okay. By the way, I don't know a world-class tip of the arrow, best of the world, half percenter that isn't fundamentally optimistic.
Yeah, I'm totally optimistic.
Right.
My wife is ad nauseum telling me, Jesus Christ, can't you sometimes see the glass is half empty? Like, no, it really never is.
But so think about the best in the world. Why would they have a thought pattern that says the future ain't going to work? Why would you have that thought pattern? Of course you would think that the future is going to be bright.
Yeah.
That's why you're going to chip in. And chipping in is required.
Right.
And what's required when you chip in is the exposure to failure, coming up short, not having enough.
Right.
Publicly, oftentimes.
Right.
And so why you can't hedge your bets.
Yeah, right.
And be the best in the world. Right. Or more importantly, your best.
Right.
Isn't that a cool thought?
Yeah.
You cannot hold back and think that you're going to ever find your best. So a big part of my fascination of the human experience is on the razor's edge. Mm-hmm. That's where we work out some stuff. For me, surfing on the razor's edge, right? And
it's your razor's edge.
It's my razor's edge.
You're not Kelly Slater.
No, right. Yeah, my razor's edge out there. And by the way, you can't tell. So I love surfing. You can't go tell the boys on the surf tour that you surf. I've got that experience.
What do you mean?
So, it was awesome. Like a little kid growing up wanting to potentially maybe be a pro surfer. Now I get to work with the best surfers in the world.
Right.
And they're like, oh, Mike, you surf? And I was like, yeah. Bad idea. Just like, what was I thinking? Like, what? Come on. Jesus. Yeah. So they're like, oh, let's go surfing. I said, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Oh my God.
Let's go snowboarding. Yeah, but, like, come on.
Yeah. Jesus. So anyways, I've got fun stories there. And
what happened? I mean, what?
So this was through Red Bull that I met a lot of the guys. And And so,
and they're super, by the way, these extreme athletes are incredibly generous, fun, awesome people. I mean, my experience has been, I've never really, I mean, sure, there's ego, but once you're willing to go up to someone and get the nerve to, go introduce yourself and talk to them, they're incredibly awesome people.
Well, I think that many of them, there are, most.
I'm sure there are exceptions.
Yeah, right. But you would say most.
Most, most.
I don't, So most have faced death. Mm-hmm. And they have lost greatly. Other people, they've gone through tough times, injury, self-induced sometimes, whatever. So there's consequences, environments of consequence. People experience consequences. And when you experience consequences, it snaps you into the fragility of life.
Right.
And you can embrace the fragility of life. And when you can embrace the fragility of life, you see more deeply other people's experience. If you've transcended the ego, the me, the look at me, I've got my hat on, I've got my swag on. That's a young version of the alpha competitor.
Yep.
That's not the alpha competitor. That's the wise man or wise woman. And so that next level is they just really understand how fragile life is, and there's a great tone to their relationships.
Right.
So that's I'm nodding my head, going, "Yeah, it's great there." So my work with many of these guys is like getting onto the razor's edge.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to do it physically. The razor's edge is not just physical.
Right.
It's always available to us in an emotional way as well. Vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
So being vulnerable takes incredible courage. Because you can be really hurt.
Right.
And so that's available to all of us. If you don't have limbs and you don't have a heart capacity, and if you don't have a technical skill, that you have to, or that you get to do because of whatever reasons, emotional vulnerability is available, and you can practice getting on the razor's edge that way. So my work with these guys is to help them get on the razor's edge, but not in their
sport.
Not in the amphitheater they're most comfortable in other amphitheaters. And so we talk about heavy things, and we do things that expose weaknesses and amplify strengths. And
I'm kind of disappointed. I'm looking at the picture of Felix in the background, and I'm thinking, wow, you didn't go up and jump with him? You didn't, come on.
I know. They didn't customize another suit for me.
Jesus.
I know.
I thought you were like the world-class guy that works with all the guys doing their stuff. Come on.
It was like, I don't know, XX millions of dollars to do the jump. So
of course.
and
of course, joking.
My hand was almost half raised, but not really. No one could see it. Yeah.
God.
What he did was
sanity.
Super incredible.
Yeah.
Super incredible. So anyways, the boys take me out there. So they're like, "Okay, Gervais, you push us on the razor's edge." Okay. So I'm in Hawaii on the North Shore.
Oh God.
You want to go surfing, Mike? Damn. Yes,
Are you big wave? I mean, what's the big stuff you?
No, I mean, there's an imaginary line, double overhead for me, like waves that are 12 foot or bigger. It's like, it's all business,
right?
Right. And so you got to be in good shape.
Yeah.
And, so it was probably right there, 12, 13, 14 feet, somewhere like that.
Pipeline, or are you at some of those?
It's called Pupukea. It's a fun little wave a little bit further south.
Okay.
And not intense, but I'm not in surf top shape, and they're laughing because the swell is building fast.
Uh-huh.
It's open ocean in Hawaii.
Yeah, right.
And it's just like, hey, paddle out this way, go here, go sit, whatever. And it's big ocean. I don't know the lineup. I've never been there. Right. My heart's pounding. And
it's very disorienting. I mean, I've done a little bit of surfing. I'm nowhere near where you are,
and nowhere near where they are.
And right, exactly. And when I go out and I'm especially in a new place, but even for me in places I've been before, I'm very disoriented. Like, I don't know how far away from the beach to be. I don't know where the big waves are going to come in. I don't know where the little wave. I need other surfers to help me figure it out.
There's this mythical thought that I think many of us have, that we'd love to be in an empty lineup.
Yeah, right.
But then as soon as it's empty, it's like, whoa,
oh God,
whoa,
what am I doing out here?
I wish there was at least one other dude here,
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Totally.
So we need each other.
That's one of the funny things. I was a whitewater kayaker for many years, and that experience of the lone guy on the break is the experience that I've had every time I drop into either a big drop, like not like that, but I'm looking at a picture of is that the world record?
That's Rafa Ortiz.
Yeah.
On Palouse Falls.
That's like 180.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look up in Washington, look at that.
It's just, I mean, I've done drops that a big drop for me ended about here, which is about an 16th of the way down, maybe 20th of the way down.
12 feet.
Yeah. I mean, I would do 12 feeters pretty easily.
Yeah.
But like, I think the biggest I ever did was like 25 feet.
25.
That was huge for me.
Yeah, come on.
And, but I was going to say, every time I drop into any kind of a rapid, class 4, class 3, class 2, that you see this line, the other people that were in front of you that you were following disappear, and you are on your own. You are in your boat on your own. You're trapped in this little, 8-foot long hull, and it's make it or not.
Yeah. Those are moments that really amplify our inner mind, our inner experience. Those are the moments when we're on the razor's edge, about to get to the razor's edge. That's what I was asking, the razor's edge of getting on that thing.
Yep.
So you're optimistic,
Yep.
back to you, right? You're optimistic. And then I think this is what happens for folks is that we get feedback that we don't have it. It didn't work out easily the way we planned or thought. That's where the training pays dividends. Do you stay the course?
Right.
Because you had a vision. I want to be peaceful. I want to live a life of happiness and joy and contentment. And damn it, if those people wouldn't cut me off, if these people wouldn't just, ignore my thoughts or whatever the thing that gets in the way is, right? Do we have the conditioning of our mind to stay the course when it doesn't go the way we think it should go?
Right.
And the truth is we never know exactly how it's going to go. So it's much easier to have a mind that is very nimble and strong. And if we can get the balance of those two together, we can, just like the strongest, oldest trees in the world, deep roots, and they sway at the top so they can adjust to the weathers of the world. Doing that inner work is pretty simple for me to say, but hard to do.
Yeah.
Do you have a philosophy? Do you train that philosophy? And a philosophy is a set of principles, a guiding set of principles for your life so that you can line up your thoughts, your words, and your actions in any environment. And then can you train the mental skills so that you can adjust and stay the course when it's hard?
Right.
That's it. And so that sounds easy, doesn't it? It's taken me a lifetime to figure out, really.
Well, I mean, I know that it's not, so I don't know if it doesn't sound easy to me.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, you've spent a lot of time on the razor's edge.
Right.
You know what it's like to be, 8 hours into something.
Right.
When your heart is at 91% max capacity, and
and you've only scratched the surface, right?
And it's like,
just go.
Yeah. What am I doing?
Right.
So that thought, what am I doing this for? It's got to be really clear.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So anyways, that second thought, as soon as things don't go the way that you hoped they would go, that's where it pays dividends to have invested in how do I want to think then?
Yeah. Right.
And then the third time, fourth and fifth time, and you're getting feedback that it's not working out.
This was the first time that I've ever quit in learning something new. Well, I mean, I don't know if that's true, but the only one that I can remember, I quit for a year. I was like, I did it for about 3 weeks, and I didn't get as good as I thought I would get in 3 weeks, which I don't even know what I thought I would get to. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm too old. Maybe I stuck it in the trunk of my car because the trunk of my car is easy access to the outside. Anywhere I am, I don't have the excuse of not using it. And it gradually went from being the thing on top of everything to the thing on the bottom of everything. And, like my son's baseball bag and all the other things. And then, it sat in there for a year. I mean, literally a year. And then a friend of mine at the beginning of this year said, my commitment this year is to be a jump roper like Floyd Mayweather by the end of the year. I'm like, that is cool. Like, she hadn't jump roped a lot before, and she took this thing on, and I was like, that is cool. What could I do like that? That's inspiring. That gets me motivated. Got that goddamn unicycle. So I doubled down.
Yeah.
I went to unicycle.com and I bought a mountain bike unicycle, which has got a disc brake, which I can't figure out yet what that's for. I've never used it, but it looks cool. And it's got this big knobby tire. It's instead of I think my learner unicycle was a 20-inch. This has got 26-inch tires, and you spent like $600 on it. And I'm like, okay. I that day, I literally put my money down, and I have not stopped. And cool. It's really cool.
There's so much cool in there, which is as soon as you have an idea or vision, the vision word sounds so airy-fairy, but I think it's a cool word. Not vision board. I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying using your imagination. As soon as you use your imagination to create an image that is exciting, that alone work. Nobody can do that for you.
Right.
Okay. Like you've got to see it and feel it and imagine it. Right. And when you get that, call it lonely work, but it's alone based work. Once you get that thing together, there's a second action that has to come with it, which is some sort of commitment. And I know that you know the science of goal setting and what you're doing with the whole life challenge there, but saying goals out loud is a double-edged sword. You can go both ways. There is some science that says, no, say it out loud, right? Because you back yourself into a corner.
Right.
That's one way to think about it. Or when you say it out loud, you build a community of supporters.
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
Whatever way it is, it's an accountability metric. Sometimes saying it out loud actually diffuses the intensity of it. There's some science around that as well.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm more of a fan of saying it out loud because I've been as thoughtful as I can building a community of people that love me and kick my ass. You know, and get both support and challenges, the two technical terms.
Is saying it out loud similar to being willing to do it and fail publicly?
Yeah. No, I think that's a different component.
Okay.
Yeah. So saying it out loud intensifies the accountability metric. Okay. But what you did is that you're saying it out loud was you double down again is you put money. So there's a little bit of a financial pain. So money for most people is a precious commodity.
Right.
It's not unlimited. You know, so you're going to actually pull in, have a little bit of pain of a precious commodity. You had to work for it, unless you're trust fund stuff, you know, we know there's challenges.
So for some people that wouldn't work. The money part wouldn't matter.
Well, there's a threshold.
Okay.
Yeah. And so sometimes folks will come in and want to do some work with me and they just signed, I get third contract folks often. So that's ridiculous dollars.
What does that mean? Third contract.
So first contract, it's like, okay, I got paid. You know, and we're talking like, it varies across sport, but let's say $10 to $20 million a year. I'm like, wow. Oh,
I made it.
And it's like 3-4 years,
right,
you know, like, wow, depending on sport. Second contract is like, oh, it's better. You get a third contract and it's more and it's not on the downward side. And so it's still an ascending contract.
Right.
Holy moly, what these guys are cracking.
Right.
And so, but it changes things. It's a different level of expectation and pressure. It changes things for people. And so it also changes their others people's expectations of them.
In a good way?
Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the hardest things that many people have is their relationships with other people when they are fundamentally different from a financial standpoint.
Right.
You know, you know, and that's an easy storyline to figure out.
Yep.
You know, it makes people very uncomfortable when others around them are more successful.
Right.
Unless you really, really love them and are genuinely happy for them. And you are, by default, you are not self-consumed with that you're making 200x less.
Right.
10x less.
Right.
2x less.
Right.
You know, whatever, right? Imagine people that so most people that you know probably make somewhere similar to your financial earnings or your family's financial earnings.
Right.
There's a comfort level there. And if you think about that, that's maybe okay, but maybe we also need to be around people, if money's important, that you want to be around people that have a better understanding of money or have, you know, changed the way that they think about money for the better. Anyways, my point is there's a threshold for everybody.
Yeah, right.
If it's $600 for you, it might be 600,000 donation if they don't commit to their thing. And your business is actually built on that.
Right.
It's better for you to charge more.
Yes.
Right. And you're like, yes.
Well, and that's really the only leverage we have.
Yeah.
You know, unless somebody's willing to do the other things on their own, we have no leverage. In fact, I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine, about coupon codes and why we got out of the business very early on around coupon codes and not giving them away. I have a lot of friends that I could have easily seeded the whole life challenge with coupon codes. But what we found very early on, we had one challenge where almost everything went wrong. Like technically we had all these issues, and anybody that was in that challenge, we invited back for free.
Cool.
And well,
of course
it was cool.
Yeah. which
what we saw, wasn't an intention. It was a fun experiment. What we saw was the drop-off rate in the one that everybody came back in for free it plummeted. Like people's engagement just, there was no skin in the game. They had no commitment or investment that, they got it for free. And so it reinforced our thought that, hey, we should really minimize free codes for this thing. If somebody wants to experiment, okay, great. They're the CEO of a company. They're investigating for their 100 employees or their 1,000 employees. Great. Bring your C team in and play for free. But the chances are that the results that they're going to get are stunted, are blunted, stunted, both.
Yeah, I can nod my head. Yeah. Yes. Well, the psychology is pretty clear about that.
Yeah.
You give someone something for free or ask them to pay $5. The people that pay $5 have a deeper appreciation for the same exact product.
Right.
Same for appreciation for beauty. You tell people that we're going to spend some money and get dressed up, even if you get a free ticket. Okay. But it's the preparation for beauty, and we're going to go to the opera. We're going to go to a violinist or a pianist and watch this amazing act of art. And you take that same celloist or violinist or pianist, let's do violinist because this was the actual experiment, and you put them in ragged clothes, and you're in a different mindset. Mm-hmm. You're not in your bow tie or your formal gear, and you're coming out of the subway. The violinist is in sitting on a milk
there's
crate.
A video with this. It's
it's a good social experiment.
Who is it? It's
one of the world's best.
It's Perlman, or I don't know, some famous violinist. Yeah,
and
nobody even stops.
Some flip nickels.
Yeah, right.
And it's the best artist in the world. So,
right.
And that's not a knock on humans. That's an important concept to embrace, that we need to prepare ourselves for art. And we need to prepare ourselves to do work, to change. And so part of the preparation is sharing and reaching into our pocket and making a financial commitment. Mm-hmm. That's part of it. There's other ways to do it. There's other, you can make donations. You can do other things.
Right.
I'm about that business model for sure. The psychology of that is right.
Right.
Yeah. You guys are doing a great job there.
Let's take a quick break. Was there something in this podcast you've heard up until now that you think someone else in your life would benefit from hearing or understanding or learning? If so, please do me a favor, do our community a favor, do the guest a favor, and forward the link to the podcast to your friend. This podcast, the Andy Petronic podcast, lives and breathes based on your willingness to share it with other people. It's the only way we grow. If you're super stoked about a particular episode or the podcast in general, another way you can help to grow it is to leave a review in iTunes. You can't click the link. You have to type the link, bit.ly/Andy Petronic podcast. It'll open up iTunes, and you have to navigate your way to the review section, and you can leave and write a review. So please do that for the sake of the community, for the sake of my guests, and for the sake of the show itself. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks, and now let's get back to the show. We both promised that we would get back to that thought from way back, however long ago, an hour ago, about habit change and whether it's an action first or a thought first. It just popped into my head during that break. Okay, I'm back there.
Cool.
What's the answer?
Well, okay. So cognitive behavioral training, CBT, as a field of study. Rational emotive therapy or training, another field of study. And these are both kind of technical, nerdy terms in the field of psychology. There is, I don't know the exact number of people in the field if we surveyed them, of licensed psychologists or neuroscientists. Most would say thought precedes emotions.
Okay.
And precedes actions. Most. There is good research that says, it ain't so clean, dude. Mm-hmm. There's really good, Damasio out of USC goes, And so he's a neuroscientist that really understands this stuff at a deep level and says, it's like a bang experience. They kind of happen together. Mm-hmm. It's very complicated, multi-factored, multi-dimensional response to a very thoughtful question, which is what comes first. Now, I think you're asking that question to try to understand how can we I want to say the second word better. How can we better get better? How can we thoughtfully get better?
Well, it really came more from the standpoint of people that are looking to make a change, is there a better way to start? Do they need to start with a thought and their actions will follow, or can they just pattern interrupt like your professor did with you, but from an action standpoint, just show up in spite of how you feel?
You need both. So I put a period behind that. Like, I want to say more and I will say more. You need both. And so if you just change the behavior and the thought stays old, we call them dry drunks. I'm not drinking anymore, but I haven't changed the thought that led me to drinking. When I'm socially around people, I'm grabbing. My knuckles are white and I'm grabbing because I'm so freaking tense and agitated, and I'm embarrassed and I don't know how to be. So you need both. And where do you start?
Will the thoughts follow? I mean, I guess sometimes they will and sometimes they won't, I guess.
Yeah, right. So then that means we're leaving our thoughts to chance.
Yeah, right.
If there's only 3 things we can train, why would we do that? So my approach is let's do both. Right? Some things, let's change our thoughts first and watch how the behaviors change, become more eloquent. And in some cases, let's just change the behavior. So for me, okay, now I'm biased. My training has biased me to really value the thought experience, right? Thoughts have...
That's your whole job. I mean, it's your whole business.
And...
unless you're out in the lineup with Kelly Slater.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and so the and there is that if I don't help extraordinary doers be consistent with their doing, if I don't help them win, is the easy kind of butchering of that more eloquent exchange of services, that they fly back on their jet and I'm on a bus home.
Right.
So we need both. And all of us, every person listening, in your community needs both as well. Extraordinary thoughts and extraordinary doing, Now, let me go up like 5 levels for just a second.
Sure.
Is that there's an old thought that many of us have, that we need to do more to be more. We need to do extraordinary things to be extraordinary. And that is...
well, we're doers, right? I mean...
This is
are you a human doing or a human being?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, there's both.
Yeah.
So we have over-indexed on the doing. And that's born out of the Industrial Revolution, when machines were going to take our grandparents and great-grandparents' jobs. And they came home, the strong came home and said, hey, family, hey, kids, there's machines coming. I'll be damned if they're going to replace me.
John Henry is this. I love that story from.
Yeah. So I'm going to work. And I'm going to figure it out. So they pass that on to us. And we're feeling the fatigue of the overbalanced model that I need to do to be. I need to do more to be more.
Right.
And it is time to really squarely look at that and say, hold on, what if I invested in being and let the doing flow from there? What if I invested in being here, being present, being authentic, being gracious, being strong, and let the doing flow from there? What would happen? My experience is that the doing has this extraordinary output because we're not focused on the actual doing. And by the way, when we're focused on the doing, we're not actually doing it. We're thinking about the doing. And that becomes like a strobe light effect. It's not analog. It's digital, tick, 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 tick. And that's not what the most skilled masters of craft, people in flow state, everyone's experienced with flow state, the zone, if you will. It's analog. It's fluid. Right? It's not the tick, tick, tick of digital. And so the tick, 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 like that digital experience is this interruption of thinking and observing and critiquing. That's like the strobe light, the bang, bang.
The constant evaluation.
Right. And so figuring out ways to triple down our focus on the being experience and trusting that the doing will whip from there in the powerful, fluid, nimble way to be able to do the extraordinary. That's how this really works now, whether it's corporate world or whatever. And we've got the experience in corporate world that our job is to think critically and creatively and to share those ideas. Right? That's our asset. The human capital, if you will, is to use our mind. We are professional sitters So our doing, is really more over-indexed on the thinking part.
Right.
That's how we do, right? So there's, in ancient wisdoms, thoughts and actions are no different. You think about cheating on your wife, it's the same as doing that. You think about being loving and kind, it's the same as doing it. That's interesting. That's an interesting thought. I would say a more modern approach is that we need both. Back to that.
Right.
So just doing a loving, kind act, but thinking. So let's say I make you soup because you're sick, but inside I'm saying, this son of a bitch is always, why do I always have to make him,
right.
Why am I doing this? And,
right.
I'm trying to be gracious.
Yes.
That doesn't work.
Right.
So back up to the doing and being. Flipping that model and saying, let me invest in the being. I have found personally in my life, the 40 some years that I've been alive, 46 years I've been alive, that has paid dividends for me. And I've seen it pay dividends for tip of the arrow performers, to say, oh yeah, come back to being me, being authentically me and expressing what I know to be true, taking risks to explore that truth. That changes the outcome in dramatic ways.
And to do that requires knowing what it is to be you.
That's right.
Which goes back to what you were saying about your values,
the thinking, philosophy.
Your philosophy, your personal philosophy.
Yeah. And then so we would suggest that the most extraordinary doers in the world, go back to this thought now, were really clear about who they were. And that's the philosophy. That's the being part. And what does that mean? They were able to have very deep clarity about their philosophy and their purpose or mission. Let's think of Helen Keller. Let's think of Martin Luther King Jr. Let's do Dr. King for just a moment. What do you stand for?
Humanity, equality.
Yeah, easy, right? You don't have to work too hard for that, right?
No, right.
Because he lined up his thoughts and his words and actions in every environment, likely got him killed.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Now you take that, and there was a particular tone that he had about it, which was nonviolence, using nonviolence. Now let's go to one of his contemporaries, Malcolm X. What was he about? Equality. And that's what he thought about most of the time. That's what his words were about. And that's what his actions are about. But he had a different tone to it, which is like, no, by any means necessary.
Right.
So there's a style to one's philosophy that is unique to you, that is unique to the person. The consistency of that style, the consistency of thoughts, words, and actions in any environment is the mark of a master, is the mark of somebody who has mastered the inner world and mastered their craft on the external world.
But aren't there people who haven't necessarily spent the time that it takes to think through their philosophy and they are just doing it without even knowing it?
Sure. I think most people, my experience is that most people, let's say this happens over and over again, a room of 500 to 5,000 people. Hey, how many of you have a philosophy? About 20, 30% would raise their hand. And then say, great. How many of you could come up right now? One of you, I'm going to ask one of you, keep your hands up, to come up on stage and share your philosophy in 25 words or less. About half or more
half
go
that.
down.
Yep.
Right. So now we're down to, in like say 10%, somewhere in there. Hands up. Say, great. Seriously, one of you come up. Only the narcissist moves. Right? Most people haven't done the work yet to say, this is my philosophy in life.
Right.
So we like to sharpen it just a little bit more and say, first pass, write, talk, get clear. What is your 25 words or less? And all the words of your native tongue, what do you stand for? What are the principles you stand for? And then we sharpen it saying, could you get that out at knife point in a dark alley? That's a razor's edge now. Right. And so at knife point, what do you stand for? Imagine me. No, don't do that. That's weird. Imagine someone came up to you and
yeah.
Right. And
let's not even talk
it's got
about that.
a knife to your back and says, hey, I'm crazy and I'm going to gut people. I'm gutting people if they don't know what they stand for.
Right.
It's a twisted mind sometimes I live in. So could I get it out? Right. I think that's a cool moment. And that was like born from this idea about what happens. This is not a belief system I have right now that one day, this is like a child's story, a child's version, I think. and this is me working it out in 2018 today, that a child's version of what happens after we die is that we're going to be met at the pearly gates, as the story goes. And, will I pass that test? Well,
right.
I don't think that's how it works.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, but can I pass that test now in flesh? Do I, do I know what I stand for?
Right.
And am I living with conviction?
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So,
it's like I said, there's some people that are already doing it and they just haven't spent time thinking about what it is they're doing.
I'm curious about that. What do you mean by that? Like, what is the image that you have there?
Well, you brought up Helen Keller. Did Helen Keller know what she stood for when she was doing what she was doing?
Let's do Rosa Parks.
Sure.
Okay,
it's
Rosa Parks. Yeah.
Right.
So she sat on the bus. She said, "I'm not moving."
Right.
What came first, the action or the thought?
I don't know. How would you know?
I think it has to be the thought for me, because people are coming. So she's seen.
Well, there's got to be some emotion that has built up over years of doing. She wouldn't just randomly do that.
Right. Yeah. That's my thought. Is that she was sick and tired of having to go to another seat.
Yeah. Right.
She was tired of it. So that's a thought.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then when you link your thoughts and your emotions to facilitate actions that are meaningful to you, you got something now.
But you're not necessarily conscious that you've done that. I guess that's really what I'm driving at. Like you haven't necessarily done the conscious work that you would do, say, if you were working with you, or you're working with a coach, or you're working, to sit down and lay it out. Here are my things.
I think that's right. That's why the 20% of people raise their hand. They've done the work. There
are other people in the room that are living in alignment with their values. They've thought it through. They're not even aware of that
they couldn't say it.
Right.
Yeah. So that makes that feels to me sloppy.
Right.
Right. And I'm not being critical.
Well, you work with people who you can't afford to be sloppy.
You can't right. Like you get sloppy up on the razor's edge.
These guys are right. They're Alex and you've worked with Alex, I'm sure.
Well, no, I was fortunate enough to have Alex on the podcast.
Oh, cool.
Mastery.
Cool.
Yeah. And so I've studied and watched him from a distance, and to be able to,
it's frightening what he does. Oh, it's absolutely
thrilling.
It's thrilling too, but I mean, my palms get sweaty. Just the idea of, because I've done some rock climbing, not like that.
See, there's got to be the caveat for us amateurs. There's got to be the caveat in there.
Oh my God! So switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about kind of what you're up to now, because you've got some really exciting projects going on and things happening that we haven't talked about yet.
Cool, that's fun. So there's like 3 ways that I've organized my professional life, 3 working laboratories, if you will. The first is a partnership with Coach Carroll, and he and I built, on the back of our intellectual properties, we built a business where we're taking his know-how on how to switch on a culture to help people become their very best, and my know-how or ideas around how to help people train their minds to become their very best. Mm-hmm. And we've taken, basically, it started like almost like a back of a napkin, like the challenge that he had for me was, the question was, do you think anyone outside of sport would be interested in what we're doing, which is culture and mindset linking?
No, I don't think anybody else would be interested in that. Isn't it funny the questions we ask ourselves?
But it was like, it was like this novel question, like, I think so.
Maybe.
Because we're so in our world. And so,
right.
So we wrote it down, like what he does, what I do, what we did together. And we shared those thoughts with Microsoft. And
now, your connection with Coach Carroll, were you hired at some point to work with the Seahawks, or?
Yeah. I was like, so my journey was into pro sports where, like, I started off on the wrong foot. Hired by the GM, back to that story.
Yeah, right. In hockey, right?
Yeah, hockey. Yeah. And hadn't met the coach yet, and the coach was.
Did you even know that you could do something? I mean, had you worked with any sports people before, teams or anyone? No. Why'd they hire you?
Good question. Thanks for that. Yeah. Looking back, I mean, yes, I had worked with some individuals. I'd never worked with a team before. And I didn't come from hockey, nor did I come from stick and ball sports.
Yeah, right.
I did have an understanding about how the razor's edge works and how the mind works on it and going to it. And like I did have that beginnings of understanding.
Was it more theoretical from school at that point?
Well, yeah, but working it out in consequential environments myself.
Okay.
Right? Surfing and whatever. So, and then, I think that looking back, that's been really important for me, is to really do the work of risk taking in consequential environments, for me to really know it, as best as I possibly can. And, I started, when I first started in the field, folks said, hey, get good at research because there's no real jobs in sport and performance psychology.
Right.
I said, wow. So that didn't sound good to me. My mind doesn't really work.
You don't seem like a researcher.
No, yeah. I think that's a good thing.
Lock you into a room with no lights and no outside contact, and put a lab coat on, and
it didn't.
You're incredibly personal and personable and conversational, and you like to surf. What come on,
doing in a lab? Yeah. And so I started teaching, and the second semester I was teaching, I felt like a phony because I was teaching about the principles that researchers, bright minds, had said are best practices.
Yeah. And
I just felt like this phony, like I needed to go carve my path.
Yeah.
And so hockey started, and the coach looked at me, brought me into his room. He bags the guys. He knows I'm coming in. This is back to hockey. He knows I'm coming in, and he bags the guy an extra 15 minutes on the ice. Like, just really flushes them, heart rate up the last 15 minutes.
Have you met the coach at this point?
No.
So you don't even
on the ice.
Do you even know what you're doing there?
No. I know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of showing up in the wrong clothes on a hockey rink. Like, wow, it's colder.
But what did they hire you to do? Was there a mission? Was there there's a problem here that you needed to fix?
Well, they just thought that it would be. They were progressive. They were ahead of the game.
Yeah, right. Because there wasn't a profession then.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so
kind of. I mean, the industry is probably 60 years old.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it goes way back. Dr. James was the kind of first bright mind in psychology and philosophy to study the extraordinary. And so it does go way back. But there wasn't a beginnings of an industry till probably 40 years ago, maybe 60, in that range, where scientific journals and studies and it's one of the reasons I chose my PhD program, because the father of applied sports psychology was teaching at this particular university. And so think about that. The father of applied sports psychology, the American dude, right? And, and I'm only 46, and this was 20 years ago.
Yeah, right.
So it's it's a relatively new subdiscipline in psychology.
Right.
So they were on it. The hockey crew was on it. And I'd be curious about, for you, I haven't met a coach or an athlete that doesn't nod their head up and down when you say, hey, how important is the mind in what you do?
Right.
And then, oh yeah, important. And then the easy kind of silly question is well, what percentage of the mind is important? This is think about elite franchises in sport or best in the world in action sports. And they go, oh, it's important. What would you say? What would you were one of the guys. What would you say?
Well, I mean, I would never say it's more important than the physical aspect, but if you're putting it on a continuum, like physical over here and mental over here, is that kind of the way you look at it? Or, because I would say it's like 100-100.
Yeah, that's right.
There's no...
Yeah, it's a cool thought.
There's no continuum.
Yeah,
there isn't a continuum that would work.
Yeah, you need...
I wouldn't trade the physical. I wouldn't decrease. I wouldn't say, okay, well, give me 80% of the physical and then we'll train 20% of the... No, I need 100-100.
Right, and that's exactly how it works. Now, what happens for most people is they formally train their craft and their body.
Yeah, and then they going back to what we were talking about.
To earlier, right? So let's say both of those are 90 and 90.
Yeah.
On point. There's a little banged up knick-knack medical injury, or... No one's perfect. No one's 100% free throw shooting or otherwise, whatever it might be. So let's say 90-90. That's 92-92, something like world class up in that range. Okay. 98-98, whatever you want to do. And then let's say it's on the 1 to 100 scale, 70% mental. You're 70%, it's good. Right? It's a C in coursework.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty good now. But you know what happens? Under pressure, everything changes a little bit.
Yep.
Okay. So I think everyone that I know just about everyone I know has felt choking or micro choking. So you think about the stages of performance: choking, micro choking, performing under pressure, thriving under pressure, and there's one more: dissolving pressure. Really cool, rare air. Okay, so
almost better there than you would be. You have to be there. You need the pressure to perform at your best.
Dissolving pressure, though, is where this amazing experience where we snap into the present moment and awareness and action,
it just goes
and everything
away.
merges, and it's like, like it's a fluid adjustment to whatever comes up, and it's masterful.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a rare air space. So let's think about the pain of choking and micro choking. So why that word choking? It's because our mind constricts and chokes off access to our craft. So if the mind is at 70 and the body and craft are at 98, we've already got like a deficit.
The weak link is the mind.
Right. Because most people, my experience, and this is changing now, especially in the elite sport, is that they haven't formally trained the mind. So they've been making it up in pretty cool ways. But their psychological framework, the way their thought patterns emerged are from their parents. I don't know, maybe they were world class, maybe they weren't. Their mentors, maybe they were world class, maybe they weren't. Muscle and Fitness magazine, Outside magazine, Shape magazine, like popular media has shaped thoughts.
Culture.
Right. Coaches, professors. Maybe it's not the best, but it's what you got.
Right.
And you're trying to figure it out, and you buy some self-help books, you buy this, that, and the other, okay. But formally training and customize a mental training program for you is possible. And where do you go to do it? Sport performance psychologists, or certainly I would say at the tip of the arrow there. And investing in a bespoke program for you, for most of us, feels like duh. Like,
right.
Yeah, like of course.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? It means psychological framework, which is how you see the future, how you make sense of yourself, how you explain events, right? And then there's self-discovery, like who are you really? That's another component. Those are two. So let me go back up. Self-discovery, psychological framework, mindset skills. That's a third pillar or component.
Okay.
Mindset skills are like, can you generate a sense of calmness in any environment? Can you generate confidence in any environment? Can you focus deeply in the present moment? Those are skills. Can you trust yourself to adjust and pivot in any environment?
Okay.
Mental imagery. Those are mental skills. You can train those. Just like you can train your biceps. You can train those. Same with self-discovery. You can condition and train those. Same with psychological framework. You can develop optimism. You can train optimism, as you well know.
Right.
Okay. And then recovery. And mindfulness. That's the fifth pillar.
Okay.
And that mindfulness is actually a thread that runs through all of them. So you can train all of those skills, and that's what a program that Coach Carol and I put together. We take those 5 components with subcomponents in each one.
Okay.
And very applied skills that people can do. And we've been fortunate enough to work with Microsoft, from Satya Nadella and his executive team, that's the CEO, cascaded throughout the organization, and they've taught us so much.
Wow.
And
did you have the program put together before you went to Microsoft? Or did they help you? Were they like the beta testers of the?
Well, we had. That's a good question, because the mind doesn't change across domains. Like the same mental skills required to be a great chess player are many of the same mental skills required to do off-peak skiing.
Right.
Focus, calm, confidence, optimism, grit, which is passion, perseverance for long-term goals. Like all of that stuff is required independent of domain. So yes, we had a way. However, we didn't understand the subtleties and nuances of global corporate rhythms.
Right.
So they helped us understand that. And what a great teacher they are. Like that's a massive, impressive, intelligent mammoth of a company with 140,000 employees.
Yep.
And so Satya Nadella, the CEO, says, guys, this is great. Can you, this is like, and he was already on his ideas of culture that he wanted to shape and create, and like his mission is to really help people have a deep meaning life. Like that's what he wants to do. Well, the mission of the company is to empower organizations and people across the globe. Like that's a really cool thing to do more.
Right.
And so he understands intuitively that it starts with investing in the quality of being. And
it starts inside. It starts inside him, and then it propagates out to his employees and to his people, and that has a massive impact on the rest of the world.
Pebble in a pond.
Right.
And so he says, can you do this for 100,000 people? And it's like, no.
I'd love to be asked that question. Can you do the whole life challenge for 100,000 people? Shit. Yeah, I guess so.
We could.
Yeah.
Coach and I looked at each other. Pete and I looked at each other like, yeah, we need some scale. Right? So they've taught us. We hired Olympians. We hired sports psychologists to do in-person trainings. So being taught by an actual doer and then a thinker. The science and the art in the amphitheaters. And so we've done. And then towards the end of it, they showed us how to do real scale using technology.
Right.
And so we've got basically an online experience as well. So we've got an in-person and an online experience. And over the last 18, 24 months, we've trained 240,000 human hours of mindset training. Wow. Really fun. And now we're just starting to open that up to some other enterprises. So we've better understood, refined it. They've helped us. They've been great partners. We're so grateful. Thank you, Satya and team. And one of the leading minds over there, Judson Althoff, which reports directly up to Satya, mostly responsible for sales and marketing. And I don't know the exact title that he's got right now, but just been an avant-garde, a tip of the arrow guy that says yes, has created an amazing pathway for us to learn. So then we built our ecosystem to do that with other enterprises, and eventually we're going to go to smaller businesses and then bundles of individuals. So we're not quite at the open the floodgates yet. We're not ready for it. Right. And so we're super excited about it. So that's what we're doing. That's one working laboratory, how to take ideas and work with them at scale. And our mission is to impact 1 in 5 people in an organization. And 1 in 5, because everyone's got 5 friends. Right. Pebble in a pond experience. And if we do 1 in 5 in an organization, rad. If we got 100, that'd be pretty cool. But 1 in 5, and then what about 1 in 5 in another enterprise? What about 1 in 5 on the West Coast? What about 1 in 5? In the middle of America. What about 1 in 5 countries? Holy mackerel! Right. And we start to really think, and technology can allow people to do that now. Yeah. Right. So there we are, and then and it takes time to change thoughts and habits and patterns. It takes time to do that. It takes real work. Yep. As you well know. And
it takes a repeated, it just takes an ongoing commitment, it doesn't just happen. Well, it can't just happen, as you pointed out, but for most people, it doesn't just happen. It can so habit pattern 6 weeks is a pretty well accepted thought about 6 weeks. It can also, you can fundamentally change everything about yourself in a nanosecond. And we see that from a post-traumatic growth experiences and post-traumatic disorder experiences, that people change. Bang. Right. Everything's different. And so it's important, I think, to always leave open that things can happen fast, but in a more thoughtful way. Most of us need to grease the groove and deepen the groove. And that requires a consistent rewiring of thoughts and behaviors. Right. And that's, until we can get it to the non-conscious level where we're not having to think about things. So that's it. So that's one working laboratory, and it's been fun and hard. And it's very cool. Very cool.
And that's called Compete to Create. So we took our two, the most important words in our philosophies. Coach Carroll's is always compete. We took that word. We're not marketing people, by the way. So we took his philosophy and my philosophy. And the key word of my philosophy is about creating. And so every day is an opportunity to create a living masterpiece. So I love it. Those two words, compete to create. And that's it. And so that's that business, and that's compete2create.net. Cool. And then Finding Mastery is an extension. That's a second working bucket, which is, just really working to understand, continue to understand, how do the best minds in the world work. And that's a podcast, findingmasterypodcast.net. Cool. No, findingmastery.net. And then I've got a small boutique experience in LA for just a couple clients a month that I stay in the trenches with, and I do the work. Oh, are you just minimized? Is that a minimal part now of your? Yeah. So 2 folks a month, And the way that we structure that is like really intense in-person experiences. And
do you like to work with people in long blocks of time, or do you work with them in shorter blocks of time, like a lot of times?
Short and, intense. So 8 hours in one day.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's kind of long. I mean, I would say that's long and intense.
Your response is like, I can't imagine.
8 hours in a room, like focused on me being a better version of me. Like, that's a lot.
By the end, we are both exhausted.
Absolutely.
And we've driven relentlessly to better insight about who you are and how you work. And then at the end of that 8 hours, we'll have a really clear understanding of the mental skills and training to do, the psychological skills training to do.
So 8 hours with you is just literally, I mean, sure, you have a process, but is it talking mostly?
There's some doing and there's some talking. Like, so we'll do one thing to get right to the edge physically, and we'll do a lot of things to get right to the edge emotionally.
Right.
And then, so that creates deeper understanding and insights. And
how do you like hang them off the edge of the balcony for like the physical part?
I'll just keep my mouth quiet.
Okay. All right.
But we do something to get on the edge physically.
Okay.
And that's bespoke to the person.
Yeah.
They're full participants in it.
Right.
And Felix Baumgartner has taught me a lot about the edge, and Rafa Ortiz.
Yeah. I mean,
the extraordinary, your colleagues and friends from Red Bull days, like they've taught me a lot about the edge.
Yeah. It's funny because I never really considered myself that much of an edge, because adventure racing we used to call them the 1, 2, 3 go sports, 1, 2, 3 jump, 1, 2, 3 huck, 1, 2, 3, ready, and our sport was, 24-hour days, 7 days in a row. There was no 1, 2, 3 jump. It was like ready, set, go. And people would just start walking. So not exciting to watch, I think the sport has a kind of a short-lived, video presence, because who wants to watch a 7-day event,
I have such respect for endurance ultra. I mean, like, what you guys do is mind-boggling.
What I did, let's be really clear, like that is no longer anywhere close. Oh my God. And that's so much. I mean, it's just shifted, it's just shifted.
Yeah, I think that's super healthy, isn't it? Like, as we expand and grow, we kind of...
I hope I'm not doing the same thing at 80 that I'm doing at 60 or 50. I'm not 60. Yeah. Where'd that come from? Jesus. Whoops.
Running downhill.
Yeah, right.
We all are running downhill in age. Yeah.
I want to ask you to finish the story about you showing up on the ice with that hockey team, and like, how'd that go?
Thank you for bringing that back. We
because you were telling me about how you got engaged with Pete Carroll, and that we lost that story.
So he says, I see him give, coach gives me some acknowledgement, and I'm the guy that's not dressed properly, right?
Yep.
And so he brings the guys in, bags them for 15 minutes, which is, no one really wants that. That's, when you get bagged or sprints at the end of a practice.
That's like Miracle. Have you seen the movie Miracle? Mm-mm. Oh God!
Oh,
really?
Yeah, of course I have. Yeah.
When the famous scene where he just runs them, not runs them, but up and down the ice for like 8 hours. Or,
was not. This was just a few minutes.
Yeah.
But it's agitating when you do difficult work and heart rate's up, and it's an internal agitation. And so then, like, all the guys are going, like, walking by me to go into the tunnel to go into the locker room, and it's like little nods, like I think they knew that I was coming, or maybe not. I don't know, but it was out of just blue collar respect, like, hey, what's up? And so I'm waiting for the coach, and so we're trailing behind, and we're walking through the tunnel, and it's cordial, it's kind, it's nice, but there's nothing there yet, and we're waiting to walk through the locker room to get to his office. So we get into the office, and we have, I don't know, a few minute conversation. But before we got into his office, he says, "Hey guys, stay in your gear." I thought that was weird, but then I thought, because we're just going to spend a few minutes, and then, if we have to wait for everyone to change and shower, it's going to take too long. Mm-hmm. But then I didn't put this together at the end. Like, they're agitated, they're sweating,
right?
They're getting cold. They're sitting in their locker, and hockey gear smells. So
badly, yes.
So So we have a few minute exchange in the locker or in his office, and it's just whatever. There's nothing there, but he walks out and he says, okay, let's go meet the boys. So he walks out and guys are looking at me like, okay. And he says, all right, guys, we got a new addition.
I can't think of a more uncomfortable situation. I'm getting a pit in my stomach, like thinking about this.
I appreciate that. Oh. Yeah, we're bonding right now for sure. Because he says, okay, boys, if you're fucked up in the head, go see Gervais.
Oh,
Jesus. That's how it started. I know. Can you believe that?
Oh my God.
I know. So there I am, as green and as wet behind the ears as you can imagine. My heart is thumping. And I'm gonna. This is a cool ending for me for the story, but I think there's a takeaway from it. Is that he turns and is walking back to his office with kind of his head down, and I know he's got this little grin about him, like I just,
right,
you know, like,
right.
Fucking, this is my room, you know. And so I look up at the boys and I look back at him, and I go, "Hey, coach." And so now I'm in dangerous territory now.
Right.
What am I doing? Okay. Now I grew up, back to the kind of our first part of our story. I grew up not needing much. Mm-hmm. I was gonna perfectly fine with exploring the world with milk crates and a plywood table to surf the world. I don't need.
Yeah, right.
I don't need much.
Right.
And so I didn't come from money. Okay, so I grew up on a farm, and then we moved to the city, and my dad did fine. Mm-hmm. Right. I didn't know if he had it or didn't have money. He did fine. Certainly, I don't know what status. We don't talk money. I don't know. But if I need a new pair of shoes, I had to earn them. Mm-hmm. But I knew they had the money for it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to try to paint the right picture there. But I don't need anything. And I certainly don't need to be embarrassed by another man.
Right.
So he's walking. I say, "Hey, coach." And I was like, okay, here we go. Fuck this dude. So I said, "Coach, my door's open for you." And I was perfectly prepared to get bounced out of there. Yeah.
Wow.
And I look back at the room, my eyebrows are up and my eyes are like, okay, what's going to happen now? As I look back to the boys, and they start hooting and howling, and the Gatorade bottle is flying, and they're pounding back.
That is great. Yeah, wow.
So he stops midstream. He looks back at me like, good job.
Right. Okay, you're not as green as you look, maybe, or something. You know,
I was green, but I didn't care.
You didn't cave in. You know.
So then, you know this, that there's alphas and betas, mm-hmm. and I'm not saying I'm an alpha. I'm not saying that, but what I've realized is that I need to be me. Yeah. And imagine the alternative. Thanks, coach. And you turn back to the guys and say, whatever, like it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, right.
And so I did turn back, and there's a hooting and hollering, and I said, okay. And so he keeps walking. And I said something, and it wasn't great. Like looking back, if I could re-script what I had to say, I would have probably said, guys, like, thank you for your time. I'm sorry you're agitated. Let's start off on a better foot another day. Yeah. But I didn't. I tried to do something. This was the green part again. Like I tried to say, okay, well, this is what we can do together. And that's so rookie-ish. Yeah, right. So I don't want to say this amazing thing, but it was a cool moment for me. Like
the other, it didn't matter. You didn't have to say anything else. You were done.
That's what I'm saying. Like looking back now, like that would have been way more eloquent. But so that's where I started in pro sport. And then I fell out of love with pro sport because of the big microphones and the self-aggrandizing way. And remember, like for me, I was that weird guy in a lot. Like, yeah, the mind's important, but man, what's that got to do with me right now? And so there's stigma attached to it. It's changed a lot. Yep. People like Felix Baumgartner. People like Kerry Walsh Jennings. People, best in the world in many domains that have raised their hand and say, no, dude, get with the mind. Mm-hmm. Like it's a good part of becoming better. Yeah. And so I just didn't enjoy it. I never really fully loved stick and ball sport in that way. And I didn't like how I felt in it. So I went to action sports. Mm-hmm. I went to MMA. I went to Olympic experiences, mm-hmm. and which is some stick and ball for sure, but it had a different tone to it. Sure, right. Like a purity. Yep. And then I met Coach Carroll, and he was different.
What was he doing in action sports?
He was not doing. So a mutual friend said, "Hey, do you know Coach Carroll?"
Just not related to what you were doing.
No,
got it.
And I was done. I was kind of.
Was he still at USC at this point?
Mm-mm. Yeah, he was up at the first year at the Seahawks.
Okay.
And I said no. And you guys got to meet. You guys think a lot alike. And so we had this kind of large dinner, of folks, and we sat across from each other. And I loved how he thought. I loved how he was thinking about his mission in life is to help others become their very best. I was like, okay. Now a lot of people say that. I've heard that story before, but there was something different about it. And he says at the end of it, I'm thinking, damn, I'm done with pro sport. Like, this is cool to meet you though, because it gives me more, like, some hope.
Yeah, right.
Like that, and so he said, just come up and see what we're doing, and this wasn't like a sales pitch or anything. Just come up and see, like, I think you'll really feel different. And it was fundamentally different. And so, what is it now? 7 or 8 years later,
wow,
we've been working together almost since then. There was a little bit of lag time in like getting our schedules to line up. His season, it was the next year that I started spending.
I can't imagine a head coach of a football team having the time to do anything other than be the head coach of a football team. Like, I don't really know much about the business, but it seems overwhelming. And
he is masterful at creating a culture where people are celebrated for who they are, and it's amazing. It really is fundamentally different than any other culture I've been in. And so he's got an advanced degree in psychology.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So he really understands it. And so go back to that concept of working laboratories. For me, this was a working laboratory to see what happens when I am lockstep in alignment and with a head coach. Because it has never been lockstep alignment in traditional sports for me. So this was like, well, what could happen? Boy, I'll tell you, I've learned a lot. I hope I've added, half as much. And so it's been great.
Wow.
It's been great.
Wow. Super cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the time this morning. I know we, I don't know if we'll have edited out that stop point we had. We had a hard stop at 11, and then your call canceled and we started again. So listeners, you may not even know what I'm talking about. But I really appreciate your time, your generosity, your contribution that you're making, you continue to make to the world.
Oh, geez. I mean, thank you. And I got to say,
I'm grateful that we have a person that broke the
barrier.
What is it called? The
speed.
Height record. The
speed too.
Yeah.
Felix Baumgartner was the first to travel from.
He wouldn't have done it without. He wouldn't have done it without you.
Well, a lot of people, but a
lot of people. I mean, that was a massive team.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to say two things. One is I love what you're doing. I really.
Thank you.
And I'm not talking about the podcast. Like, I'm talking about like the business that you're doing with the challenging people to be better, and really cool. And so the model, and everything you're doing, I want to learn more because I know it. I've never been in it.
Right.
But I've seen what you've been doing from a distance, and congratulations to
make
a dent in what you're doing. Really cool. And it's not easy. And the second is I love your laugh.
Thank you.
Yeah, the freedom that you got. Yeah. So,
what's funny is when is this podcast going to come out? I'm not sure, but we're actually. Okay, I'm not going to say what I was going to say because it's a surprise for this coming Whole Life Challenge. Okay. But there are a lot of people that want my laugh to be a ringtone. I don't even know how to do that. I got to investigate that because
someone in your community has already done it.
Yeah, right. Somebody's going to listen to this right now and going to email me. Oh, I know. Yeah.
Yes, that's a great one. So
thank you.
Thanks for your spirit. This was a wonderfully easy conversation.
Cool.
And I wish you the best.
Thank you. Hey, it's Andy, and thanks so much for listening. If you want to know more about what I'm learning each month, head over to andypetronic.com and subscribe to my monthly newsletter. If you were touched, moved, or inspired by anything you heard today, chances are someone else you know would be too. Please take a moment to think about who and send them a link to this episode. And if you're super stoked, please head over to iTunes to write a review. The best way to keep current on guests and episodes is to subscribe so that the latest one will automatically get delivered straight to your phone. The apps I use for this are Apple Podcasts, Overcast, or Pocket Casts. The Andy Petronic podcast is produced by our team, Winslow Jenkins, Becca Borowski, and Ernie Hurtado. Big thanks to Nikki Grudidaria for the artwork. You can find all of our episodes, links, and complete show notes at wholelifechallenge.com/podcast. I'm Andy Petronic. Thanks for listening.